guys, welcome to today's video, which is your complete guide and book recommendations and tips for becoming a reader in 2025. If that is one of your New Year's resolutions, this video is definitely for you. Even if you are a die-hard reader, there will still be something in this video that is helpful for you, whether that is a new book recommendation or just tips on getting off your phone to start reading, because that is my biggest issue. I have my 3 best bits of advice and then just multiple book recommendations for a variety of genres and tastes. I definitely believe there is something in here for everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Jen. Reading is my literal favourite hobby in the entire world, and I just want everyone to be able to experience how great books are and how great reading is, and so that is what today's video is. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe, and let me know if you have any other tips and tricks that you can leave in the comments below. Okay, very quickly, like, why am I even bothering with this video? Why should you want to read? Why should it even be a New Year's resolution for you? There is literally multiple reasons why reading is so good for you. Number one, it is a huge stress reducer. The actual readers who've read like Magnolia Parks are like the Boys of Tommen series are like, what the fuck? No, it's not. Unless you're reading a stressful book, on the whole, reading is a de-stressor. There is a statistic I saw online that's like your stress reduces by up to 68% within the first 6 minutes of reading, which is insane. But also, like, I know that from experience. Reading has also been linked to preventing things like Alzheimer's, dementia. It's just really good for your brain as like a meditative activity. Third, if you read before bed, your sleep quality is drastically improved and you find it easier to fall asleep. And lastly, and my biggest thing when I talk about reading, particularly reading fiction books, empathy. Reading truly helps people develop empathy for other people. When you're reading books, even if it's like non-fiction, autobiography, but specifically fiction, you are literally like putting yourself in the shoes of someone else. You are living a life that is completely different to yours. That is a huge contributor to empathy. And then not only that, I just think readings became cool all of a sudden, and I think that's so nice. As someone who always grew up a reader, it is so nice to me that like reading is considered trendy now, and it's not something you need to hide from people. It's something you can talk about with people. A lot of people do it now. It's also a great way to build and find a community, especially if you're posting on social media or you're part of a book club. I don't think reading has ever been more of a social activity as it is in this day and age, which is amazing for the readers. Probably my number one piece of advice when it comes to getting into reading is that if you feel like reading is boring, you are just reading boring books. You're just not reading the right book. Literally not one doubt in my mind that that is the case, that you have just read boring books. You just haven't found your niche. You've not found what books you like yet, which is why I have a massive pile here of book recommendations, but we will get to those later. The reason readers love reading so much is because we read fiction books and we read good fiction books. Of course, this is all completely up to personal preference, but my honest opinion, which I'm just giving to you, is if you're trying to get into reading, stop reading self-help books. I think because people associate reading with like trying to better themselves, they think it has to be like a self-help book, otherwise what's the point? But as I've just described, reading is amazing for so many reasons, and fiction especially is amazing for that, you know, stress relief, for the empathy thing. I think that's just the one thing I want to say is please do not be afraid to read silly books. Please do not be afraid to pick up a smutty romance book or a silly fantasy book about dragons. Do not let people tell you what is a good book and what is not. I really am the biggest advocate for fiction books. Okay, so now you've got a good book if you have watched to the end of the video and you've got your book recommendations. But even seasoned readers know that even with a good book, it can still be so difficult to just get off your phone. Like the amount of times I've told myself, right, I'm going to sit down and read. I'm like so excited to read, and then I just end up sitting on my phone. My advice is always go make yourself a cup of tea or a hot drink or something. Put your phone on do not disturb so you're not going to be annoyed by like buzzing or notifications or anything. But before you put it away, set a timer for 15 minutes. As I said, reading is a relaxing activity. It's a meditative activity. So when your brain is so used to those dopamine hits from being on your phone, reading will feel boring at first. It will feel uncomfortable. You'll feel agitated. You'll feel like, oh my god, like just want that dopamine hit of opening your phone and scrolling or seeing notifications and likes. However, I do not know the scientific evidence behind this, but genuinely in my experience, if you can get past the first 15 minutes, your brain like chills out. You get over that initial like dopamine withdrawal and you really get into your reading. And I almost always find that once I've done that 15 minutes, when the timer goes off, even though I've told myself I'm only going to read for 15 minutes, if I'm reading a good book, I almost always keep reading. The last little tip I'm going to give is what time of day you should read at. That kind of sounds like really random, like who cares what time of day you read at? But genuinely, this is something that all of my family and friends say to me when they're talking about getting into reading, is when I get into bed, I just fall asleep. If I start reading, I just fall asleep. So that is something I would say, is be wary of trying to get into reading and reading at night, because that's the thing, I'm the exact same. Like, it is a relaxing activity, and that's a reason why reading is so great before bed. But if you're really wanting to like get into a story or something, it might be better to think of other times of the day to read. My favourite times of the day to read are on the train to work. My train gets in very early, so I love to go into a coffee shop every day before I go to work to read for half an hour. Now, this is not financially responsible at all. I should not be doing that. For my bank account's sake, I should not be doing that. So if you're not in a position to do that, or honestly you're just more sensible than me and realise that that's a ridiculous amount of money to spend on coffee every day, it's completely fair. And then on my lunch breaks, I am literally on a lunch break right now, which is why I'm sitting down with a cup of tea and my book. If you are someone who gets half an hour or hour lunch breaks, that is once again an amazing amount of time where you can set that aside every day or a couple of times a week, and it's like a set amount of time that you're reading for. It doesn't matter how long you're reading for, it's more just, it's great because it gets you into a routine of reading. But to be honest, my ultimate favourite way to read or time to read is on a Saturday or Sunday morning when I've not got plans for the day and I can just sit until like 11-12 p.m. and just read in bed. That is like the peak reader experience. That's like the one experience where I'm like, I wish everyone who didn't read could experience this. But that's the thing, it is so personal to your own routine, and hopefully you will find a little slot in the day where it works for you. But yeah, I'm gonna do some reading now of this book. I think I have something in this pile for everyone. I've covered a range of different like genres and styles of books. If you don't like one, you might like the other. But I am a romance girly, so the first few recs I'll give are romance books. The first like books and series that I would encourage you to try, and I feel like is really, really addictive, are cowboy romances. But I specifically recommend this series, the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver, because it is so fast paced, keeps you turning the page, it just keeps you wanting more. The tension between the characters is always incredible. But across this series we have a range of different like relationships. So we have like enemies to lovers, single dad and the nanny, childhood best friends, we have like accidental pregnancy, we have everything you could ever want in here. I just think it's so much fun. I love this series so much, and I really think it would get you like hooked into reading. Another really fun light-hearted series I would recommend would be the Vancouver Storm series. This is like sports romance, ice hockey book series, multiple different relationships. The first 3 books are out so far, but I love this. I found this so addictive. And if you are maybe thinking of getting a Kindle, these books are on Kindle Unlimited as well, so you get them free with that subscription. If you're wanting something that's a wee bit deeper but still is chaotic, I always recommend the Magnolia Park series. I always say Magnolia Park series is like Gossip Girl if it was set in London. It's like the most elite group in London, and they're all in love with each other, they all sleep with each other, they all cheat on each other. It's crazy. But these characters, you start out being like, what is this? I hate all of these people, these are all the worst people. And you finish it being like, these are my best friends. You find yourself relating to different characters. It's just incredible. It's my comfort book series, to be honest. If you're wanting sad romance, or like a romance book that will make you cry but like heal you at the end, the Boys of Tommen series. The Boys of Tommen series follows our first main characters, Johnny and Shannon. She has a really bad home life. She moves to his private school because she's been so badly bullied in her old school. Johnny is like the star rugby player, and he basically becomes like her protector. These are the deepest books I've ever read. They made me hysterically cry, but like I love it so much. The best like friend group in the world, found family, like it's just sensational. I don't think anything will ever make me feel the way these books made me feel. Fantasy is another very addictive, exciting genre to get into, and I think can really help you get into reading, but it can be quite a lot at first. So I think a great way to get you into fantasy is romantasy. So it's like a romance with just a bit more to it, because there's a fantasy plot line going on at the same time. There's like action, there's a war, there's fighting. It just makes it a wee bit more interesting, I would say. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Powerless is kind of given Hunger Games. It's Hunger Games, but the romance is so much better. There's no love triangle, but it is extreme enemies to lovers. I think this is such a great way to get into romantasy and fantasy. It has a great plot line. Similarly to this, I would recommend the Fourth Wing series. This is the second book, Iron Flame, because I don't have Fourth Wing with me right now. This is kind of the exact same vibe, enemies to lovers, except there's dragons involved. She's basically training at like a dragon academy. I love this even more than the Perilous trilogy, because the dragons and like that whole world is so cool and so interesting, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It's just silly, it's just fun. This is kind of different romantasy, and this is Kingdom of the Wicked. This is more like a little bit darker. This is a romance between a girl who basically her twin sister has been murdered, so she is like seeking vengeance. She is seeking to avenge her sister. She makes a deal with one of the 7 princes of hell. All 7 brothers are named after the 7 deadly sins. She makes a deal with Wrath, and it's very much like enemies to lovers, but like he's also kind of helping her. I just love the vibe of this. I read this so fast and just, yeah, thought it was so fun. But then if you feel like you just want to go into fantasy, just pure action, just amazing complex storyline, could not recommend anything other than Throne of Glass. It's probably one of the biggest series on TikTok. It's one of the most popular book series right now, and with good reason. This is an amazing book series that follows. It's always so hard explaining this. I'm not even going to tell you, just go in blind, but it is so good. It's a long series. I think it's like 7 or 8 books, but from a girl who literally doesn't read that much fantasy, I ate it up. It's not like too hard for you to read or anything like that. It's just a bit more intense and a bit more commitment. If you're like me and you love a sad book, we have like 2 different types of sad books that I would recommend. The first one is A Man Called Ove, which is literally like my favourite book ever. This is basically about a wee old man who is just like the grumpy neighbour. He kind of thinks his life's over after everything he's been through, and one day some new neighbours move in across the road and they just cannot seem to leave him alone. But the story is basically just about like the power of human connection, and just, it's the most like heartwarming story I've ever read. But I was crying from literally the first chapter, but it's more like sad in a touching way than like actually like depressing. Whereas Normal People by Sally Rooney will forever be one of the most like soul destroying books I have ever read in my life. It is a romance, somewhat, about 2 people who met in high school and just kind of right person, wrong time vibe. It's kind of about like first love, and it's actually horrifying, but it's one of the best books I've ever read. If you're someone who thinks you would be into like thrillers or mystery books, here are my 2 favourites. First one is The Murder After the Night Before. I usually find it very hard to connect with these types of books because I don't really feel like characters are written as well, or written in a way that you like care about them. I really cared about the characters in this story. Basically about a girl who wakes up the night after her Christmas night out, finds out that there's an awful video of her on the internet, but not only that, she finds out that her flatmate and best friend is dead. She needs to find out what happened to her, and also find out just what happened that night. Why can't she remember anything? Really good book. Another recommendation I have is Strange Sally Diamond. This is not so much a thriller as it's more like crime mystery almost. So this is basically about a girl who, Sally Diamond, is clearly very different, and basically her dad always used to say to her, when I die, just put me out with the bins. I don't want a funeral, just put me out with the bins. Because Sally is the way that she is, she takes this literally, and when her father passes away, she puts him out with the bins. Obviously the police are knocking at her door being like, what happened to your dad? But basically her involvement with the police and other neighbours, she uncovers kind of her childhood, why she is the way that she is. It is a crazy story, but incredible. I loved it so much. So yeah, that would be the kind of main book recommendations I can think of. If there's any you think I missed, please let me know in the comments so we could have a wee list of books that would be good to read if you're getting into reading, but those are my personal favourites.